Okay.
If you're able to jam or whatever too, that would be a cool little sequence.
All right, today we're going to be taking a tour of 108 Recording right in the Gallatin Square in Tennessee. The story behind this place is fascinating to me. The owners of the studio are very talented session musicians as well as producers and engineers, and they're good friends of mine as well. You've seen Gideon in some of the videos playing pedal steel here. He comes in and does sessions from time to time. I'll link both of them down below if you guys want to follow them and see what they're up to. And of course, the studio tours here on this channel are all sponsored by our friends at sweetwater.com. So as we're going through any of the tours that you're watching here on the channel, if you find something interesting that you want to check out, hit the link down in the description to go to sweetwater.com and get any information you want on the gear. I also have listed pretty much all the gear that I use in my own personal studio if you're interested in checking any of that out. The links are down in the description. Thank you, Sweetwater, for sponsoring this video. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, do me a favor, just press that subscribe button and hit the thumbs up while you're at it. And let's go check out 108 Recording.
Hi, I'm Gabe Klein. This is 108 Recording, and welcome to the space. It was an old feed and seed built somewhere around 1880s. We're not sure entirely on the official date, but it has been a variety of things over the years, and it was a jazz venue when I was in college, and then I ended up purchasing it with my brother, who you'll meet in a minute. There was a wall right there that separated this half from this half, and they ran this as like a 30-person club, and I used to play it in college. And I had gone to church with them as a kid, but I reconnected with them through playing the gig. And then they left to be with some family in Florida, and it sat here vacant for years. And I was looking to buy a house, and then was crazy enough to ask to buy this instead. And here we are. And before even making it an official studio, we just decided to throw all the gear in and figure out what the building was capable of and what it sounded like, and then design the studio from there. So it is a current work in process. We don't have a control room separately per se. It's just all in, and everybody's on headphones, and it works a lot better than I ever would have thought. So we are in Gallatin, which is just outside of Nashville, 35 minutes east, and it's a quaint little downtown. There's a coffee shop right through the wall. The courthouse is right across the street. It's sort of small town America on the outside. And this was E. Franklin & Sons Feed and Seed. It's the original tin ceiling, the original crown molding, not the original paint job, but the original plaster. Well, I think this is one of, actually, as far as I know from the history, it's one of the better kept buildings as far as its original architecture is concerned. This was the remnants of the bar, which functions perfectly for snare drums. And this, I know for a fact this is the original counter that you would have purchased grain and stuff from the clerk 100 years ago. And it was found in the cellar, and the owner prior to me fixed it up and made it into a sort of a wine bar situation. But yeah, we're just far enough from Nashville to not feel maybe as much of the rat race, but just close enough to want to compete with gear, because you know, there's all sorts of gear to buy and not enough time to buy all of it. But yeah, I'm a drummer first and a keys player second, and then an audio engineer to facilitate all the stuff. And Gideon plays everything with a string on it. He will intro his stuff a bit later, but I'm a drummer first, and I have all my stuff. It's the 1987 recording custom kit set up currently. There are lots more toms with that, but I tend to, so much of stuff is just 2 toms, and because of the cradle, I can swap just the toms, or I can swap just the bass drum. And I often hot swap different kits. Like I'll use the Gretsch kick with the Sugar toms, or the Ludwig toms with the Tricks on kit, or I will mix and match based on the sonic palette that I need to for any given song. And a lot of it's mobile, but a lot of it is work done here, and it's very strange to try to explain the workflow of the building and the workflow of what Gideon and I do. But basically, Gideon and I wear a dozen hats each. I had a career engineer background, I have a career drummer background, and a career keys background. So sometimes it's very specific that I'm doing one of those things, or all of those things. And so sometimes people come here for stacking a whole song and 20 instruments and 50 tracks on a Pro Tools session, or sometimes it's just kit. That is that section. Keyboards is sort of strewn across because there's so many of them. There's a Hammond A100, an old 1930s upright, a 1924 Mason Hamlin Baby Grand. I will be getting a 9-foot Canave that has been worked on for 3 years and is almost done, but is not here yet. Wurlitzer, Mellotron, synths galore, although the Juno 60 probably gets the most use out of it, because it's a Juno 60. What more do you need? This stand is a Jasper stand that I had to import from Germany. Yep. It wheels so easily. And knocks over lights too, which I forgot was hanging on it. No, but so much of when you own gear is like, how do you set it up that it all gets used easily? Because a lot of these were just in cases and I wouldn't use them. And so the workflow workarounds of a lot of times have been to find ways to use things easily. And this has been a game changer, along with this little input switcher that I can just pick the synth, set it to the input, and go and be fast. Because if Gideon and I are about anything, it's about speed. Yeah. And everything has to be quick. The drums stay set up, everything stays mic'd up. Speaking of which, comes to sort of the main control room. A 1974 Sphere console, an Eclipse A. I think it's the second or third one ever built. It was built for Tiki Sound in, I don't remember the city name, but it was somewhere on northwest coast, California. Didn't have any huge records on it per se. However, if you ever went to Chuck E. Cheese as a child, this cut the quadraphonic audio for the animatronic band.
No way.
Yes way. So that is the
what a record.
That is the fame and fortune of this board. I'd sonically put it up with anything. I think it sounds great. The EQ in particular is it's an inductor-based graphic EQ, so there are 9 inductors in every EQ, which is a fairly insane amount, and is the only graphic EQ I know of, other than maybe some of those old Motown EQs that do that. They nailed the input section on this. The routing is one of the most confusing things, and they didn't have great documentation. And the original, I'm only the second owner of this. Oh. I bought it from the guy who commissioned it, this dude named Grady O'Neill, and he was 92 when I bought it from him. Wow. Or when Gideon and I bought it from him 4 years ago. And he was not really in the mood to give me a walkthrough of how it worked. So I was very lucky to have a tech friend named Jim Thomas, who worked for Hughes Aircraft for a long time and is a brilliant electrical engineer, as well as an audio nut and a dear friend who taught me how to read cap, it taught me how to work soldering iron and all that stuff. And it was a whole journey getting it back up to snuff and things. But it sounds great. We love it. It's very simple to use, which is maybe one of my favorite parts about it, is that it keeps the workflow quick. But it's Class AB. The preamps on them, I would put up with anything I've ever heard. They sound great. And fun side benefit of the EQs have much less phase shift on them when you're diming them at like 12 or 15 dB of boost or cut, which means nothing for anybody who's not an audio nerd, but for drum tracking, for having 14 mics on a kit or something, the phase stays really locked even if you're crazy diming shit, which allows you to do some really aggressive moves sonically without your phase just sort of going to shit. So that's great. I love it. Being a keyboardist and sort of an arranger too and all sorts of other things, this has become a non-negotiable to have a keyboard drawer. And although I keep fighting with myself of do I have my main monitors on this side or sonically sounding better on the meter bridge, and it's a constant argument in my head. It's the engineer fighting the keyboardist in me. There's not a great middle ground between all the workflows. Like, are you an engineer workflow or sonics are the most important thing? Because this thing sort of reflects a little bit of top end, and I have to keep in mind when listening, but also space is a thing, and I want all my rack gear close to me. So it's certainly been an adventure of like seeing what the give and takes of every kind of workflow there are, since I do a bunch of random stuff. But this is a pretty good, I've got the speakers here that I can switch to, the JBLs that are not flat at all, but they sound really fun, and I know them well. And then the Dutch and Dutch are more flat. 32 in and out, 2 Lynx Roars. I'd love to get the new ones, but the old ones still work great. I'm still able to run latency of less than 3 milliseconds on it, which is smaller than Pro Tools HD is. Pro Tools HD, I think, is 3.9. I had a huge debate on whether to buy HD or not. So I went way into the rabbit hole of, okay, well, latency is the biggest thing. And as a player, it's the biggest thing. So like, I have to decide whether or not it's worth it or not. And I figured out, doing some clocking tests, that the round trip latency through this rig, when running 64 samples, which I'm able to do on most any session, unless I'm mixing or something, in which case I'll bump up the buffer size, but is a little less than Pro Tools. So, and it's much cheaper than Pro Tools HD, so that just sort of made sense, and it still works great. And Lynx is so good about keeping up with like updates, and
that's good.
You know, I've had zero trouble with the digital realm of things. They are practically never fussy. They sound great, which is sort of what you want from like the digital portion of your rig. You just sort of want it to just work. And knock on wood, it does, which is great. So the Sphere preamps get used for the majority of everything. I think it's the most cliche thing to say. It sounds between an API and a Neve. If that helps you sort of understand, it's not quite as like low mid heavy as a Neve, but it's close and has the sort of same pillowiness. And I don't know if it's because it's old or it's the design or what it is, but it is interesting. It doesn't have a preamp gain knob on it. It's like one of the only preamps I know of that exists like it, where it's on like a tube Western Electric 1920s preamp design, but solid state version of it, where the gain is constant. It's, I think, 68 dB a gain. And it's always there.
Whoa.
And the engineers at the time, there was sort of a who's who of the guy from Cinemag Transformers was a part of Sphere, John Hall, Dean Jensen from Jensen Transformers and Jensen Speakers was involved in the design of it. Where they were like, the best sounding preamp is this gain, and that's it. So what you do is you pad going into it.
Okay.
You have negative 15, negative 30, or negative 45 dB of padding going in.
Whoa, that's crazy.
And then the pad being the fader coming out of it.
Yeah.
And that is a way different workflow than we think of,
Sure.
generally speaking, with preamps. It's really creative and it sounds really good.
That's cool.
And it's sort of hard to explain. That would be a longer tangent to go down, but it has changed my whole ethos about how I think about preamplification in general. So this gets the majority of the work, certainly most of the drums, all of the drums other than those room mics, which I'll get to, but the pianos, vocals, acoustic, everything goes through that. The undertone I use actually more for the EQ, because the crazy parametric EQ of theirs comes in super handy when problem solving, because this is only a graphic EQ. I don't have shelving on this.
Yeah.
The preamps on them get used for convenience.
Okay, yeah.
Mainly like if I set up a vocal mic and I need to track some backup vocals of myself, I'll just like plug it in. Or if I'm reamping through a pedal board, I'll plug it in through the DI inputs. And the preamps on it are great, and if I, for some reason, find myself needing something different, or maybe particularly clean, like I can take the transformers out of it and I want a sort of wire with gain situation, I can do that. Most of the time I just like what these do, and I like the sort of sonic cohesion of everything running through it. This set of room mics sort of gets used for, I point it at an instrument and then it functions as a room mic for it.
Yeah,
so we do string quartets a lot of times, or string octets, because Gideon's an arranger and brings in a good amount of work doing that, and we'll sort of strike this area and make it a string room, and those will become string room mics for that. And those sort of, again, out of convenience, but it also sounds great. It's running through this old 1970s something Spectra 1024 console channel strips that are not technically mine. They're
Here they are.
a perma-loan. Josh Gleave, thank you very much. He's borrowing some gear of mine and I'm borrowing some gear of his. It's sort of a,
That's
you
cool.
know. I'm a big fan of the complementer, the Spectra Sonics complementer things, which it's like the fastest analog limiter ever built. I think they just sound particularly great on a variety of sources. They'll give you like, without sounding even too compressed, they'll give you like 10 dB more headroom. So those are the M610 Pros, which are much smaller. I don't think they make that model anymore either. And then this is the mastering version that has the detinted pots, but is the same circuit despite being 6 times larger.
Yeah.
For essentially the same thing. But I do run mixes through it a lot of times, and the step switching makes it pretty handy.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just, you know,
Manly stuff.
some manly stuff.
Compressor.
I don't think I've ever seen a mono very moo other than this one, which is just rare. I bought that from Paul Moak.
Oh, cool.
Was selling it. And even, man, I have to say, I've re-fallen in love with these 160As. I modded them by putting the transformer out on it, because I had a broken switch on one, and from doing work on the console, I'm now sort of confident enough to do some basic repairs on audio gear.
Yeah.
And I was fixing a switch, and on the PCB board of those 160As, it just says Jensen transformer with no transformer there. And I was like, So I called up Jensen Transformers on the phone. I was like, do you guys still make this? And they're like, yeah, it's $70 a piece. I ordered them, and I installed it in one and not the other, and did an A/B test.
Yeah.
And it's not doing anything I'm not an electrical engineer, but usually transformers are like using the ratio to change voltage and add gain, or they're usually done to do something. And this is not doing anything other than just isolating the output of it. It doesn't add gain, doesn't like do a true function other than just because of how transformers are made. It's a good way to isolate the output. And so it's not supposed to do anything, and it sounds way different. The low end on it is like superbly better. And
With or without it?
with it.
With
With the transformer, and at least to my ears. And I sent it to several engineer friends, and they're like, yeah, it sounds like way better. And I asked my electrical engineer friends, I'm like, how is this possible? They're like, we have no idea. It shouldn't do anything.
Yeah.
It's not spec'd to add low end, but it just does. So it sounds great. Oh, this drum machine was left in this building. I don't know how it got here. It's one of the old rolling CompuRhythms. It sounds great. I don't use it a ton because it doesn't have MIDI, but if I want to do something without click, like this will drift on its own tempo a little bit.
Yeah.
It's just sort of fun, and I haven't had the heart to like get rid of it or anything. I was on tannoys, tiny tannoys, not even like the cool mastering ones. I was on tiny tannoys for forever, because it's what my dad had, it's what I grew up with. We had those, and a Mackie console, and Tascam D88s. And I bought pretty much all of this gear, some of it with Gideon, some of it my own, before even thinking of upgrading to tannoys. And I have these JBLs to make things sound bigger and better. They were at a hi-fi shop across the street for $100. And they sound really good for $100 and a $200 realistic Radio Shack amplifier that runs them, or stereo that runs them. But I finally decided, I was like, okay, I need to like pay good money for true flat, nice monitors. And I rented or borrowed or bought and then had the 30-day window to give back like 10 sets of monitors.
Wow.
I tried PMCs, ATCs, Barefoots, Focals, name it, and I probably tried it at some point. And put it, in a real working situation. And they all sounded great and different. And I mean, speakers are one of those things that are truly like subjective to you and in your room and how you work, which gets to one of the main things about the Dutch and Dutch is their flexibility and the built-in DSP stuff. And first off, even without it, I think they're my favorite set of monitors I've tried in here, without any fancy stuff. But this is a giant room, and I don't have like standing waves the same way you would in a smaller room because it's so big. But I've also moved a couple times. This control room area has moved, and it will continue to move as I renovate and change the building. There will be a true control room at some point. I have designs for it, but it's build as I can. And so these have the flexibility to sort of, with the DSP, to analyze where they're at and sound the same no matter where you go. Wow. So that was sort of like they immediately won. And it's not that other ones don't have that, but it has to do with every speaker design I'm aware of. If you put it at a wall, you're at a loss. Mm-hmm. You're fighting against it. Yeah. Like if they have built-in software to help against a boundary wall, they're using a high-pass filter to cut low end because you have this low end built up and stuff. These, you tell the DSP in centimeters how far away from any boundary you are, either a back boundary or a side boundary, and the subwoofers couple against it, and actually it gives the speakers headroom. It gives them more volume. They use it to work with it. And as far as I could hear to my ears, it doesn't like screw up the sound either. Yeah. Like changing before and after that, I didn't like notice. And I also listened to them freestanding in a different spot in here as well as up against the wall. So that flexibility is sort of, especially in my case when I'm not just an engineer type, it's like I'm trying to marry all these sort of different things into one very weird pasta of music making. They are the most flexible speaker I'm aware of. And they're not cheap, but when you think that everything I do on a daily basis goes through them, it's made things faster, I make decisions quicker, and I have to give credit to Gideon on it too. Gideon has this weird sixth sense. Gideon does not care about audio gear per se, other than he wants it to sound good. Mm-hmm. But we walked into Vintage King like, I don't know, 6 years ago, looking for something else, but they had just started selling these, and we listened to them off the cuff in a room we don't know, and Gideon was like, "You're gonna own those one day." And I was like, "I don't know, I think they sounded good, but like, there's lots of other speakers." And Gideon's like, "No, those are the ones you're gonna grow old with." And he was right, and I hate him, but he was right. Yeah. And he's been like that with other things too. I went to do like a 2-bus compression shootout and tried like 30 compressors. The second one we listened to was the C1LA by Smart. And he's like, "That's it, we're done. We don't need to listen to anything else." I'm like, "Bro, we got like API 2500s, we've got Shadow Hills, all the stuff." And he was like, "No, that's it." And he was right. On the stuff I was mixing at the time, it crushed and it sounded the best to my ears. So I hate that he's right about some of that stuff. This is sort of what transitions out of recording into my just living space. So you're sort of standing in the living room. It's split residential commercial and I'm living in it. So yeah, it's a home studio. Fun little fact, this is every paint job this building has ever had.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
So the goldish, yellowish is the original. There's also some of it in the very back. That's the original 18 whatever paint job. I'm sure there's lead in it too, but I don't sand it, we're fine. The white came somewhere in the 50s when it was the men's clothing store, Cox Toggery, and then in the 80s it was black. And then the prior owners to me did the gray everywhere. And the reason that these exist is that these were changing rooms when it was a clothing store. Yeah. And then they functioned as closets when the prior owners lived here, so they just didn't change it. And then I ripped out the closets because I needed to just open the space up. But then I noticed all the different paint jobs and went down a quest of hunting down what they meant. And it's just too cool. I'll never paint over it now. because it's a little bit of history of the building. The second best day of your life is when you get a pool table. The first best day is figuring out how you can get rid of it, but you know, we're still rocking and rolling with it. And then very handsome modeling off the kitchen. That's Gideon. Brother, business partner, and co-noisemaker. But yeah, kitchen, there used to be a partition wall, and then this is where the prior owners lived. This is not like a permanent wall. So, and like, this is definitely the prior owners just set this up to sort of make an alcove. That being said, it could be older than that. I don't think it is, because I don't know. The prior owners had very quirky designs, like putting doors on the corner. For no other reason other than I think they thought it looked cool. I do know this was the original staircase up, hence the door. And there's actually a reverse stairway like going down to the cellar is on the other side of this. I actually want to return the staircase being this way because it's a poor use of space, as you'll see in the back. So this is a functioning, not finished, and not going to be finished laundry room, bathroom, and then just storage space. I say it's not going to be finished because I'm building an apartment upstairs that I will move into, and then this whole first floor will be renovated into a true studio, which maybe we'll do a video on later on, who knows. Yeah. Had an original freight lift. It was broken and shattered, and it was a long story. I would have been not nearly brave enough to fix it on my own. My dad's a brilliant engineer and helped me put it back together. We had to rebuild some bracing and do all sorts of nonsense. But it works now and it lifts stuff up and down, which is great. And so yeah, we'll go take a look upstairs. So it's a big work in progress. It'll be a apartment in the front half and then a spare control room with 2 booths and like a kitchenette hangout area and stuff. There's gonna be, this was a window. This has been cut by Mason to be a door. I don't have a door for it yet. Doors take a forever long time to get made when they're a custom size. But there'll be like a spiral staircase outside so that you can come into the second floor and like you walk in, there'll be a kitchenette hangout area, and then it'll be control room B. So you could work in control room B without having to go through the first floor and stuff. I'm gonna wall up the first floor part of the elevator, but I'm gonna keep this exposed because it's just too cool. And I put way too much work into it to hide it with drywall. All the roof rafters are original, but we replaced by hand all of the old beadboard, which was another whole adventure when the roof had to get replaced. So I'm rebuilding the original front windows from scratch. But yeah, it's gonna stay lofty. I would never dare like cover the brick and stuff. I have the plans already approved and done and all that kind of stuff. And so we are on the precipice of full on getting that done, which will be a very exciting day.
These are a lot of the guitars that I just kind of keep stored at this studio or that I'll take over to Nashville if I'm doing some stuff downtown. I have actually a lot of other gear at my personal house, but I kind of just like look at this as like sort of the essentials. I would consider this like my sort of like spanky Nashville guitar actually more than a Tele. I feel comfortable with it. I got this at Corner Music a while ago. I traded in this ginormous SVT like Ampeg cabinet and head that I just never used. And so I was able to save some money on that. This guitar, Sam Hunter borrowed for a long time, and I think he even credited as borrowing it, but this is a Gretsch Country Gentleman, and it is probably my favorite Gretsch guitar of all time. And so I really love using this, but at the same time, I kind of wanted to get, these are like completely hollow, and I wanted something that was sort of like the kind of, like I've always enjoyed playing like bigger guitars, and so I wanted something with a solid block all the way through, like a 335. So this is, so if that's a Gretsch Country Gentleman, this is the Gibson Country Gentleman, which Chet Atkins designed this. And so it's actually a little bit thinner, but it's kind of that same finish, and it's also got like a master volume. And the cool thing about this is it's got these like little wing things that shoot out. So that way when you're tuning a guitar, you can just like instantly turn it. So it's got those tuners on here. You know, and then I've got a baritone, but a lot of like what I'll get kind of called in to do is like the acoustic utility stuff. This is like one of my favorite acoustics. I've got another one back at my house that's a Larrivee, but as far as that I normally use this Gibson Country Western. We'll see if it's in tune. It's just a great, like, overall guitar for almost anything. I've got this mandolin, and the cool thing about this one is it's actually a Gibson that was never finished, probably from the 90s. And I found it at a friend's like workshop where he does a bunch of other work on some guitars and stuff. He wouldn't finish it because the person who had originally owned it had passed away. So it was sort of like in purgatory. And I just was like, man, I would love to just buy this mandolin. I don't even know what it sounds like, you know. So I gave him some money for it, and then I think he finished it up and he gave the rest to the family. And so it's like one of my other favorite mandolins that I own. And so I take this one everywhere whenever I go. And again, with the utility thing and having stuff here all the time, it's a lot of gear, but it's like you don't need it until you do need it. I also kind of like look for instruments as like more of an inspiration thing than just like, well, you have to use this in order to get this. Like, right. I feel like if someone says, I kind of want this, you know, Eagles Hotel California vibe, it's like, well, I feel like I can get that still on just like a regular 6-string, or at least, you know, or a mandolin or something. It doesn't just always have to be a 12-string, but sometimes there's just that spirit of like, well, you kind of want that 12-string. And then I think this is funny. I've got both a Ganjo and a regular banjo. And the reason why, I assume most people know what these are, but basically a banjo has 5 strings on it, and it's got the high resonant like G string, and this is tuned just like a guitar. But I was doing some tracks for a friend of mine who was basically having to set up some tracks for a tour. And I couldn't, some people, they just pick up a Ganjo and they play guitar parts. And so I couldn't get all of like the low enough notes on a banjo. So actually I've realized having both a Ganjo and a banjo is really good, because I feel like if people want like that bluegrass picking sound, like the really fast stuff, which I'm not very fast at it, but I can go to this. But then if they want something that's like doubling a guitar line, that's normally why I kind of gravitate towards this. And I've got both a square neck dobro and a round neck. So a square neck, you can see, for those who don't know, and this is like how you would play it like Jerry Douglas. Like you can see how much higher the strings are. Yeah. And it's literally a square where it kind of like lays on your lap, or in this case, I use it, I play it like a little mini table sort of thing. I've got my bar, and it shows how in tune this is. So, and then I've got the regular round neck too, which is just basically like a guitar version, you know, as you can see. So I've got both of those kind of always handy. And then I grew up playing cello. So I've always got a cello here kind of ready to go. And I've been learning, even if I'm not asked to bring a cello, it's probably just always safe to bring a cello to sessions. I've got a total of 3 fiddles and 3 cellos and 1 viola and 1 double bass. And I keep collecting other instruments, and my wife loves it. So if I'm going out to other studios, I've been using this Morgan amp. It's called an SW50R. The R just means that it's got a built-in reverb. But man, I'll tell you, between like playing pedal steel and guitar, electric guitar, this thing gives me a lot of clean headroom for the steel, but then it's got more personality that feels like I'm playing through like a really nice Fender Deluxe, but that doesn't really break up. And so I've got that, and before that I was using this Tyler all the time, and this actually is a really great middle of the road amp. Depending on the studio, especially the size of it and stuff, I'll bring this. And this is like sort of like my Princeton / Deluxe reverb. This is another Tyler amp that's sort of like a copy of a Bassman Marshall. This is an Allen amp that's like a brown-faced Princeton that like Chris Stapleton would originally use. And it's hard to know if it's really true to the circuitry, because I've played these before, like the original Fenders, and I love how beefy this one is. I borrowed a couple of other like a Matchless or like a Divide by 13, and they all sound great, and you know, come at me. But I really love this hand-wired Vox. I think this amp is so amazing for top 40 country, anything kind of bright, like it just really cuts through, and it can get pretty clean with the pedal steel and stuff. Especially when clients are coming over here, it's just nice to kind of have everything just in case, you know, I don't know what the day will always hold, and so I don't live too far from here that if I have to run home to grab something that's over there, it's a breeze. You can see here, or maybe you can see, these barn doors house all of the cases, so that way my brother still has like an actual living room with storage. So yeah, so that's all my stuff.
Dude, thank you guys so much for having us and showing us this space. We're basically neighbors, and I've always wondered like what you guys are up to in here, so it's really cool to see it in its current iteration. Is there a place that people can go to follow you guys? Or?
Just us individually. We don't have a company name per se, but I am Spartacus 1960 on Instagram.
Okay.
And you are Gitter Player on Instagram.
Gitter player, like guitar player.
I like a Gitter. Just reach out to us on the gram, and I think I've got my phone number on there anyway. We're just very old-fashioned. Everything we've ever done is grassroots related. I've never done a marketing internet campaign for either of us individually or collectively as a partnership. So if you want to make music with us, just hit us up. We'd love to talk to you.
I'll link the phone book down in the description. Find you guys in there. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next one.
See you.